So this morning, I'm going to give you a status report about what did we do over the last year to make this happen and what was part of this campaign. And then we need your feedback. We did a survey just over the last couple of weeks asking you some specific questions about how you would like to participate maybe next year in this campaign. But the larger question is this a direction you want us to continue to go in? Or is it time to leave this effort behind us? I mean, that is really the key question here, right? I'm phrasing it very baldly because this is a lot of work. This takes a lot of energy on the part of the board, and we need your energy to make this happen and the kinds of things that we're trying to make happen. So let me just get into this PowerPoint and I'll explain a little bit more of the background. So what instigated the campaign? Wisconsin has a very weak PEG law. There's no minimum transmission standard for PEG channels. So as a result, Charter and AT&T, which is now DirecTV, they carry PEG channels in a very substandard format, as you all know. When we started this campaign last year, we had spent 2 sessions of the legislature drafting bills, taking them around to legislators, doing one-page summaries, knocking on doors, and we came up with absolutely nothing. Nobody wanted to touch this issue. So we decided we couldn't any longer go directly to legislators because they weren't responsive. So we decided the only other thing we could do is a big outreach campaign and to market PEG more broadly to the public and to try to generate some public support for what we're trying to do so that maybe in that effort we could then get more of the public to talk to their legislators, to get some people caring about this issue that PEG is not carried in HD. So Charter Spectrum has not demonstrated any interest in upgrading PEG transmission unless municipalities pay for it. And if you're interested in a little bit more background on Wisconsin law in regard to this and federal law, we are going to be talking more about the ins and outs of this at another session today. Charter Spectrum has not instigated and followed through with any HD upgrades. And again, this is something we're going to be going into more detail with in another workshop today. Old analog transmission equipment is very unreliable and hard to replace. And it's on us. It's on us to find the equipment that is compatible with Charter Spectrum's system. So if that means we have to scour the secondary markets, it's on us under Wisconsin law. Several municipalities have given back the channel space rather than deal with finding old equipment to replace broken modulators. Superior recently closed, Dodgeville. Merrill has been off the air for 15 months. So this is only going to get worse. So the goal of the campaign was to generate enough public pressure to persuade Republicans, because the Republicans control the legislature, to do something legislatively or push Charter to voluntarily improve transmission for PEG and prevent Charter from charging municipalities for HD PEG carriage. So we had several stages mapped out. We have three stages. And the first stage was for WCM, the board, and myself to do a few things. First of all, we talked to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and we wanted them to make the issue a priority. We wanted to talk to DFI, which is the Department of Financial Institutions. They're actually the agency on the state level that is responsible for regulating cable TV, if you can believe it. But we wanted to get subscriber numbers. Should we care about this issue? Is anybody subscribing to cable yet? How many people? So we wanted to find out that fact. And then we wanted to tell you, our members, about our strategy, get your support, and collect a lot of different facts. So we held a meeting with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities on August 4th, and the result of that meeting was they published an article about our situation in the municipality, which I wrote, and we had a table at the League of Wisconsin Municipalities conference in October, and that was very helpful to reaching out to a lot of municipal officials about what we're doing and our concerns. And then the League agreed to talk to legislators about our issue if we laid a solid groundwork for it, if we had, if we managed to get a certain amount of publicity about what we needed to do, and if there was some movement, that they would help us at that point. So we did talk to the Department of Financial Institutions, and I've been actually emailing them back and forth quite a bit lately. They are ready to talk to us about the statute, to really drill down and figure out exactly what that statute allows, what it does not allow, to just draw their attention to the pitfalls of that statute. That meeting has not been held yet, but they are willing to meet with us about that, just to get a real good read from the agency standpoint about what they say the law means. The DFI provided annual reports to us for all of the cable operators or video service providers in the state that we asked for. Basically, we went through certain municipalities. Those municipalities asked DFI for the annual reports, and DFI was forthcoming, and they gave us those annual reports. And those annual reports provided subscriber numbers to us. So now we know, for all of our members virtually, with a couple of exceptions, what the subscriber count is in all of our communities, which we did not know before. So that was a really huge piece of research that we were able to successfully get. We also found out that Select, in particular, doesn't seem to be filing annual reports at all. And it was interesting. Like, I'll just say that when I first contacted DFI, the woman I talked to there said, "Oh, we don't regulate cable." So I was like, "But yes, you do." And so I sent her the statute showing her, yes, there it is. And that's when she said, "Okay, you know, a legal team here will talk to you about the statute." Similarly, with the cable penetration rate, at first we started getting annual reports from 7 years ago, and we kept going back and forth, and finally she found more recent annual reports. So it's been interesting. Okay. So then we created, we talked about the campaign in our member update, which comes out monthly, and we featured that, the campaign from May through September of 2022, what it was about, asking members to provide us with certain information. The board started calling and emailing members to ask them for certain information, which I will get into in a little bit. And then in October, we started a separate newsletter called the Campaign Progress Report. So we pulled all of this stuff out of our member update because it was just occupying too much space at the top, and split it into another newsletter so that if you wanted to find out what was happening and how things were progressing, you would get that, and you would see what's going on, what we're doing, what our different committees are doing on this topic, and all that. So one of the first things we wanted to find out is, are we reaching our members with our newsletters? Because if we're not communicating with you about our ideas and what we want you to do, well, then, you know, we've got a big problem right at the get-go. So we wanted to find out if our members are getting our materials. And so in a combination of communications between members and board members, when we called people and said, "Are you getting these things?" So sort of like self-reporting, and just looking through constant contact records. At this point, all we know for certain, and a lot of this, I'll say a lot of this data is, this is how much progress we've made. It may not be perfect progress, but this is where we're at, and we just want to give you an honest, you know, appraisal of what we've been able to do. So right now, we know that, and a lot of this data is based on station members. So we're talking about our key contacts in our 53 member stations. A lot of this does not include independent producers or friends or community producers, that kind of thing. So right now, we're thinking that maybe 12% are 12 out of our 12 members, I'm sorry, out of our 53 members are not opening our emails or not receiving them, or maybe it's just a sniglet with constant contact that it's not registering that they're opening it. I don't know, but that's what we see. And we asked members a bunch of different things, and as you know, our board, each board member is assigned like 5 station members, and our board members are called captains, and we have circles. And so each board member contacted member stations in their circle and said, and asked these questions, and tried to get answers from our members to these questions. So first of all, we wanted you to get permission from your supervisor to participate in this marketing campaign. And again, I'm talking about key member stations. Then we asked them to add at least 2 associate members just to build our mailing list a little bit for members. Make sure you knew a way to monitor Charter Signal, because if you don't know you're out, how can we monitor what's going on out there? So we wanted everybody to make sure that they have found a way to monitor Charter Signal of your PEG channel. Provide WCM with contact information for your PIO, your Public Information Officer, and local journalists, so that if we started doing more of a marketing campaign, we would know who to contact. We'd have a list of journalists. We would be able to run it through your Public Information Officer if that was the way to go. And then we had a public policy survey on origination points. We wanted to find out how many of you have modulators and are doing analog transmission all the way. How many of you maybe have modulators but are maybe running it over fiber. There's a lot of different permutations, and Boyce is going to talk a little bit about that later. So permission to participate in the campaign. So we got no response from 30 of the media centers. We got about 5 saying they were looking into it. 1 was denied, and permission was received by 18. So again, part of the no response is that a lot of our stations are very, very small. Many are very, very part-time, and it's darn hard to get a hold of some of our stations. So, we wanted people to add at least 2 associate members. So the number of stations who added any associate members in the last year is 13 out of 53. Those adding 2 or more were Algoma, Lake Mills, Marshfield, Oshkosh, Sun Prairie, and Wausau. And this white chart shows you how many associate members each station has. So that means, let's say in, I don't know, Plymouth, which is not true. Plymouth, I think there's 3 contacts. But in a lot of places, we know one person. We're in touch with one person in that municipality. That's it. So in most places, we have 1 or 2 contacts per municipality. So you can see at the bottom where it says 80 contacts, that's Sun Prairie. I think 21 contacts is Oshkosh. And I'm going to have to confess I can't remember the other ones. But largely, we only have 1 contact, and that's pretty darn tenuous. So we wanted people to add subscribers to your monthly community news. It's our monthly publication that is designed for a general audience, and we want that general audience to be as large as possible. We want to be able to tell our advertisers that we're reaching more than 1,000 people. So we asked people to add subscribers to that list. So 14 member stations added people to the subscriber list. And those are the people who added anyone to our subscriber list in the last year. So we did an origination point survey, like I was saying earlier, and I do have this page here. So we got a much better response rate with that. 38 member stations completed that, and looks like about 13 did not. Who found a way to monitor charter signal? Again, no response from 27 stations. Some were not a customer. Some said there's just no way I can find a way. And 22 did find a way or reported that they could monitor charter signal. Media contacts. We wanted the name of a city public information officer. Hardly anyone provided that. And the name of the local newspaper, we have that for virtually everyone because it's a required field when you sign up for membership every year, when you renew your membership. So we do know the newspapers for every person. However, we don't have specific journalist contacts for most communities. We've found out over the last few years doing surveys that virtually everyone produces an HD, and 3/4. I'm sorry, that's not true. I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong. The green is unknown, so we could not get answers from that percentage of station members as to whether they are producing an HD or not. Again, yeah.
So what you're saying is 100% of people who responded produce an HD?
So what I'm saying is I can say that with certainty that that the number of people who are producing an HD is at least that number. Like, what is that? What percentage is that? 80%?
But the unknown, that's your unknown?
Yeah.
They don't know. That's just not,
Yeah, no, it's our unknown.
What you're saying is 100% of the people who respond say they produce an HD.
Yes.
So why isn't that?
Because I'm trying to get across how hard it is to communicate with our members.
All right.
The point here is we're having a hard time getting through.
But they probably know whether they're producing an HD.
I think they probably do. They just haven't.
If anyone is wandering around,
No, we suspect they know. Although that's a good question because when it comes to modulators, a lot of them don't know. So yes, so of the people who we were in contact with, 100% produce an HD and 100% transmit an HD, which is a big difference. I mean, that changed over the last 5 years. There was a variety of things, but now it's all HD. Okay, and this is Boyce's slide. That means that if Charter said to them tomorrow, we're hooking you up.
Oh, you're saying that they would transmit?
They could. They could if they would.
Yeah, I think essentially means that they have their playback servers can output HD. So if the means were there, they're ready to do it. So looking at different methods of transmission to the video service provider, there's a much more detailed spreadsheet that we've been working off of. But what we've been doing lately is color coding the spreadsheet just to sort of look at risk. And so just sort of summarizing the basic types of transmission that we're seeing. The oldest, obviously, and there's a surprisingly large number of people still using analog modulators to transmit standard definition video over old coaxial cable back to, and then presumably connecting to a modern digital cable system on the other end. That's extremely high risk. This is not equipment that you can just go and buy off the shelf anymore. This isn't manufactured in many cases. So this is where we're seeing failures that then lead to stations being down for months or simply deciding to pack it in and opt for other distribution methods other than cable television, or just pack it in. Yes?
Do you know from the TFI information, do you know the number of subscribers?
For those communities?
Those communities?
Yes.
Can you come up with a total number of subscribers at risk?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. That might be a good way to express it. The number of subscribers at risk, not the operators.
Subscribers, service at risk, not just
It's not stations at risk, but subscribers.
subscribers who are paying for this service.
Right.
Uh-huh.
They are at risk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
So, anyways, we sort of color-coded that, starting with the most dicey systems out there, and that is the old FM modulators. Moving up from that, we start seeing, and it's Drake encoders here, but there's some other means in there. We had some people reporting in surveys that they were doing analog over fiber. I'm not sure if that's just someone using like some kind of a converter to go from, composite or component or YC, baseband video over fiber and then turning it back into that at the other end. Is anyone doing that? Yeah.
That's the way we deliver
Okay.
Jefferson to Spectrum.
Okay.
So we have an old modulator, and it's still mixing the old style frequencies back together into a single FM signal out coax, and then that has an encoder that goes onto their fiber.
Wow.
So it is still, it's still the old NTSC modulated as a particular channel number mixed into particular two channels, and then it goes on their fiber. So they're dedicating a pair of fiber for us to do.
Interesting. Which they could just as easily dedicate to sending an IP signal or stream. Yeah. Yeah. So we see that, and then sort of the next step up from that is digital over fiber, and that's what we're doing here in Madison. We have our signal, which, and again, still standard definition, but at least SDI, and then we have WYOU, who originates in our central library, and so we have an encoder that, in addition to encoding those signals, also multiplexes them into a single ASI stream that holds both, and then we just convert that from, yep.
I guess I'll add to that fiber story. Spectrum did that when we moved our origination from more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
They switched us from coax to fiber.
Okay. Yeah, and we did ours transition similarly over a decade ago. When we did it, we got rid of all of the analog equipment because we were already a HD SDI plant. So we're just doing one down conversion to SD SDI that we then push into the encoder, which then goes to just a copper to fiber converter, just ASI, which is on a BNC connector, to fiber, single pair of single mode out to Verona Road, where they just turn it back into ASI and put it into their system. So that's sort of the next, and that's been actually really reliable. The drawback there, of course, is it's still standard definition, and it's a somewhat complex chain with a number of pieces of equipment. And of course, the more pieces of equipment in the chain, the more potential points of failure. What we're seeing now so that, again, that's using an encoder. What we're seeing now more from both Spectrum and TDS, they're starting to specify Drake encoders. Drake is a manufacturer. These encoders can do HD, they can do SD, they don't care. You just, whatever settings you put in, it's going to push it through. So, but again, at least with, and we'll talk about this later, I'm not as familiar with the, with sort of Charter or Spectrum, and it's, telling you, oh, sure, we can do HD for money. But from a technical standpoint, the devices that they're recommending or specifying are completely capable of doing SD or HD, and there's no difference. I mean, and at this point, it's not even a matter of, it's not about resolution. It's about bit rate. I mean, you're sending a stream, and if they want to complain about bandwidth, I can make a pretty efficient HD stream. Granted, the more pixels you have, it'd be nice to have a higher bit rate, but that's not the important metric anymore. So we are, though, with TDS, who is specifying the same encoder. They're more than happy to accommodate HD. And then if you look here, there's some other companies who are also have no problem with pushing HD. So we've kind of, we gave them, color-coded them green. This is where we like to be. This is where we want to see people. This is the most reliable system. It's going to be the highest quality of signal going to the customer. So that's really, that's the details.
Yeah. Any questions about that?
And feel free to talk to me, especially if you haven't
Yes.
filled out a survey and you want to let me know how you're transmitting. Let me know.
Yeah. And even if you have, because we may not have understood it. Okay. So we're running out of time, and I really did want your feedback, and we want to report on a survey. So the other thing we did was we prepared a bunch of different materials for members to use. We wanted people to be able to participate in this campaign any way they wanted to. We gave them a lot of suggestions. So we wanted people to kind of think about what they might want to do, and like I said, we gave them suggestions. So we did a bunch of different materials. I won't read all of this through, but when we did the campaign progress reports and we sent them out to you, we always included a list of materials that you could use whenever you needed to use these materials. So we held a fall workshop. We brought in a marketing expert. This guy talked to us about marketing campaigns and how you should think about them. And what came out of that is the group decided to produce a PSA that would appear on PEG channels about the need to upgrade to HD. And a script was written, and that was included in the campaign progress report. And we asked members to respond and say things like, yes, I would like to help with voiceover, or yes, I would like to contribute some video footage to this. And I think we got one person saying they would be interested. Rice Lake, I just want to give a shout out to Rice Lake. They did a fabulous PSA, and if we had more time, I'd be like telling you, James, get that PSA up here. It's a really, really good PSA, and I believe you can all view it. I'm sure I put it in one of the member updates or something, or the campaign progress report maybe, or, oh, maybe your monthly community news even. Yeah, yeah. He did a fantastic PSA about all the different platforms they're on. So then we did a survey in the last couple of weeks and starting to talk about, okay, so do we want to continue along this route? Is there energy in the organization to continue along? Given that we've been having a hard time kind of getting through to some of our members, et cetera. So we sent out a 5-question survey, and we got 27 responses. So 11% responded to this survey. And it was only 5 minutes to complete.
I responded twice, so.
Oh, okay. Okay, 10%. You responded twice? Told you. So, anyway. So, of those who took the survey, this is the spread. Most of them were directors, and we sent this out to everybody, community producers, PEG staff, our independent producers, everybody. And this is the raw numbers. So 16 media center managers filled it out, 4 staffers, 1 part-timer, 1 community producer, a couple Janice twice, and a few local officials. Okay. Yeah, so what she did here was, I haven't seen these pages before. So this is the total number of, the total spread of WCM members by type, and then the chart on the right is who took the survey. Okay, so one of the questions was, rank the methods we could use in the order you believe would be most effective for WCM. And most people felt social media was the most effective, then your monthly community news, then our website, topical events, press releases, PSAs, city resolutions, letter to the editor, and petitions. So these are the tactics you think would be best used in this campaign. Wow, that's so darn pretty. What is it? Wow. Yes, please.
All right, so I helped out with the survey just because of the type of questions we wanted to ask. We couldn't do through member clicks, so I just kind of stepped in, and as for those who did take it, it was on Microsoft Forms. So this is still question 2, what we saw here, but the nice thing about ranking questions is you can kind of see where people felt the priorities were. So you could see 44% found social media to be the #1 priority and how we can be most effective in this campaign. While, on the flip side, you see like the 18.5% found that your monthly community news was the most priority. So it was just a breakdown. I thought it was very interesting. And, if you look at the bottom, you can see about half of the people, so 14-ish, thought that petitions probably was not the best way to go. With question 3, another ranking question, rank the following messages WCM should work on conveying to the public. Overall, it was, sorry, I got to pull up my notes here. We cover our local communities and help build community identity. And then in second was community members can participate in creating local media and tell their own stories. So again, just breaking it down, I found this to be kind of interesting in the fact that more people actually thought the second one was more important, but as you can see, that's just kind of how the breakdown ended up happening for that. Next one, we wanted to gauge interest, and it was the question of like, maybe people just don't want to participate in doing stuff, but here we do see that people are willing to contribute in some sort of way, with the most being asking the municipality to pass a resolution in support of HC Carriage when appropriate. So, or participate in Advocacy Day at the Capitol and provide contact information for commercial press, which again is interesting if you think about what Mary was talking about earlier. We do ask for that, and we're not getting it. So why is that? And the last question was another ranking question for the following services you would like for WCM to prioritize in. And yeah, I hate that Microsoft cuts these off, so I'll pull up the full description here for the #1 priority people found was professional development and networking events, such as the conference, fall workshop, and Media Fest. Well, coming in second was promoting the value of PEG, media programs to the public, and third being the advocating at the state level for PEG Carriage. Again, breaking it down just to see where people did kind of prioritize those previous answers. So, that's the last slide. Mary, I'll let you wrap it up.
So, what time is it? 46. And this session is over when? 45. Okay, so it's over. Okay, so, for any of you who don't have to run upstairs and check out of the hotel, you know, we'd love to talk to you a little bit longer if you can stay, because the next actual workshop doesn't start until 10:15. So, this is where we turn it back over to you and get your theories on what we've just presented. And Jake has a microphone over there. He's coming.
I have a few questions like normal. Are any of the 53 or 58 stations HD?
Yeah, so the ones in green. Those are in HD.
That's a small amount.
Oh, yeah. No, no. This is what we know.
Oh, I got it.
So I think to define who's in HD, these are the stations that are cable casting in HD, who are sending an HD signal to a cable company that is then delivering it to their customers in HD. Just about everybody who took the survey can output an HD signal and probably is on their web stream or the OTT platforms and certainly on demand. So when you say who's doing it in HD, basically all of us are. There's just one cable company that's refusing to continue to deliver our signal in HD. So I think
Thank
it's
you.
important to
Thank
qualify
you.
it that way.
Important clarification.
Thank you. So my next question is, I guess, I know that the whole thing is they want that one company also to transmit everyone in HD without us having to pay. What is the likelihood of them doing that? Is it just from pure pressure, from getting enough legislator and support, or is this something they're required to? Well, I know they're not required to do, but
So-
is this something they do like in other states that we can say, hey, you did it here? What type of stand do we have?
That's a lot of questions in one, I just want to say. Okay, so first of all, Charters Nationwide is really not cooperating in providing HD. Is that fair, Mike? I mean, has Charter off?
I think it's a strong word. They promote communities paying exorbitant money for their responsibility.
Okay, so one of the things that we're going to be talking about this afternoon is exactly what is Wisconsin law in regard to this. Is there a loophole that they can sneak through? How does the FCC impact that? And it actually leads to the fact that I have a plan to talk to the Department of Financial Institutions about this, because until we find out what the state thinks is the law, you know, it's kind of hard to say whether or not Charter would be skirting it or not. But it's a complicated situation. It's not straight up. Yes.
One more question. Are most of these towns only have the one cable provider? Like when we campaigned for competition?
Well, I mean, actually, that's one of the things that we were discussing about playing up how wonderful TDS is, that they're offering us an HD, and not like saying anything about Charter necessarily, but just really saying, oh, you should get TDS. We're in HD on TDS, you know, and TDS is really rolling out cable in a lot of communities right now. So that is one possibility, and TDS is basically, yes, they're overbuilding is the term that you use for that. But I have to say, there's a lot of communities with only Charter spectrum. And that's just the way it is. Most of them are one-horse towns, so to speak.
Yeah, I just would add, if you look at even up here, Stoughton is both in the red and in the green. They're in the red because for Charter Spectrum, they're still using an old analog modulator, but for their TDS, this is one place. And they've
That's
got
right.
both.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I think we should make the comparison. Absolutely, it's not if Spectrum's just claim, well, nobody does that. But they do. And in fact, in some cases, in the same municipality.
And what I find interesting too is that TDS is rolling out cable service all over the state. So TDS must think that there's money to be made, that cable is still a going concern. I don't know why they would do that otherwise. It's sort of interesting. Yeah, Dave.
So could we, so could we have some sort of legislation to say that all VSP services have to meet the highest standards set by whoever? So let's say TDS is providing HD. That means if we could get it in legislation, then Charter would be forced to provide the same thing so that they're all on the same playing field. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
if TDS does it, then the law should be that it should require Charter to do it.
Right. I guess the problem we have is that the legislature is not really paying any attention to us. So, we could talk about what would make a great bill, but right now, all we know after 2 sessions is they're not listening to us.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, I don't think anything will happen until the channels go away. I mean,
Well, then it's a little too late, isn't
yeah,
it?
Yeah, right. But that's what happens is all of a sudden they tune over to our channels. Hey, guess what? It's black. What happened? What happened? Well, it's been going on for 20-some years. So what I'm thinking is, could we do something like the net neutrality protest? If you remember, they had to break the internet on all these different websites saying, hey, it was on a ton of websites. Well, we could do the same thing on our cable channels. We could just black it out for a day with a graphic saying that, this is what's happening.
Well, that's a tactic we could use, and we could talk about that. But I think I still want to even back up a little further, which is, and maybe I should just look at a show of hands. Of those who are here, and it's a small number of us, but of those here, how many would like us to continue to pursue this sort of outreach and marketing campaign to see if we could raise the profile of PEG in our communities, keep pushing, make the public more aware that Charter is a bad actor here and they're not offering HD when they could. Is that something we want to continue to pursue? I guess the alternative would be we're done fighting and we're leaving the cable fights behind us and we're going to focus on streaming and making friends with TDS, and that's the alternative, right? Do you want to think about that for a little bit? But because the board doesn't want to keep putting energy into something that you don't care a lot about. I think that's the bottom line here. And we have to respect the energy of the people who are on our board, and we want to make sure that our board is happy. So, we want to be leading you where you want to go. We don't want to be leading you where you don't want to go. So, Will, did you want to say something?
I was going to, but I thought I'd wait and see if anybody else was going to say something.
Okay, so let's just.
I'm that person in class.
Okay.
Well, really, you could phrase this and say you're going to put this campaign on pause. Right. This campaign could be on pause. You've learned a lot. You have a lot of tools in your toolbox. You are still going to have to fight some of these fights in different ways. I'm kind of stunned to hear that Spectrum is requiring us to come up with a 25-year-old modulator.
Oh, yes. And
That's something that changed,
and
right?
that's not Charter saying that. That is the state. That is
They're
the
saying
state
that
of
the state allows
Wisconsin.
they're saying that the state allows that, even though they were replacing them in the past.
You're getting it wrong. The state of Wisconsin has looked at the law and said municipalities must provide the equipment that Charter wants you to have. It's not Charter saying that.
Yes.
It's the state saying this is what the statute says.
But Spectrum replaced a bunch of equipment for me when I asked for it, even after 2007.
Yes, because they do what they want to do. They
Right.
were really nice to
Yes.
Algoma too.
Yes.
You know, it's just who
And-
they feel like being nice to.
And there are new issues in the yellow. I know that Alan has got some issues in the equipment that they're asking him to provide because
Right.
they're asking him to provide something impossible, Alan, perhaps?
Well, I'd rather do that at the other workshop.
I do have a Catco modulator for sale if anybody wants to buy it. It's variable. I bought it from the school district.
Okay,
I guess I don't have a question there. I'm just saying
Ye-
you could say you're putting it on pause.
but what does that mean, pause? What are we
Well,
waiting?
what
I
does it-
mean,
what
if
does
we
it mean to stop
pause,
it?
pardon?
What does it mean to stop it? You're not going to still deal with these issues?
Well, I see the situation as this, that in the next year, there will probably be another few stations that will go dark because they can't find modulators. And the year after that, there'll be some more. And the time to act and be active is now before we lose even more stations. If we want to preserve these stations, then we've got to act quickly and quickly and with some energy, because it takes a lot of energy to do something like this. And I think, honestly, I think this organization is used to being more of a professional association where people get support for what they're doing in their stations. And it's been wonderful for that. And what we're really asking this organization to do is, instead of just having it be a support group for stations, we're asking you to turn this into more of an outreach organization to get the message out to the public that we have value, that HD, if we don't get HD, more stations will fail. And subscribers will not have this service from Charter because these PEG stations will go away. And so it's a different orientation. And I think it's hard for us in some ways to make that switch because we're focused on what we have to do at our stations to do what we do every day. And to ask you to say, okay, now we've got to really start promoting ourselves and the value of what we do to our community on a regular basis. And we want to come together and do something on the state level and do all these collaborations. It's a big ask because I know you guys are all overworked. So, but if we don't do that, I fear that this is just going to keep going on and on and on, and they're just going to go away.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of things to say. I won't say a lot, but I think the pause is interesting, and I think that at what level do we do it, right? Because stopping or pausing is kind of the same thing. It's not like we're never going to deal with the issue. Many organizations, including Parks and Recs organizations and everything across Wisconsin, do have a legislative day where they go and talk to their legislators. So it's not crazy that we do that. I mean, that's pretty normal for organizations like this to do that. And I think the tough part is there's probably a big disconnect between the people who are lobbying on a state level for charter and the person who comes to replace your modulator. There's no connection there, right? So your people at your area are awesome, but there's nothing to do up here where the people in Monona, I don't even know who they are. They don't seem to contact me. I don't contact them. So there's that different disconnect. I'd be curious what you think, because I think it's one of those things where it's like, is this just some fictitious thing that might happen someday and there's no real reality around it, and reality to lobbying and money, and that we don't have the money they do and that kind of thing? Or is this a possibility type of thing?
So, I mean, that's part of the conversation that's happening a little bit later on a little bit later on in one of the sessions, I think, about sort of having a cable channel and, should you have one? I'm not a WCM member. I can say that the thing that you're describing, Mary, I see in communities across the country, and it's a real question about sort of like burnout, fatigue, limited resources, and just trying to keep the doors open, right? So you're not alone in that, and so the thing that I see with some of the responses about people not responding to email, I mean, don't be surprised at that because of the conditions people find themselves in. I think that's the first thing, my first response. The second response I would have to you about the work that you're doing is that we should be taking the analysis and having that feed into different policy actions that are possible within the sort of apparatus. So like you may not have the bodies to get co-sponsors for a bill to change Wisconsin law. Talking about the risk to Wisconsin consumers in articles that you've got based upon the analysis that you've got about what's happening with these stations and the local, the local information service that they provide and what's at risk and how many Wisconsin residents would basically be out in the dark is, I think, something that is extremely useful in the court of public opinion that could be actually turned into very useful articles for discussion at the state or local level, and certainly we can bring that up before the FCC as well, because that level of analysis is what I've been asking for from people across the country, and it's like finding hen's teeth to get it, because people don't have the time to be able to actually compile the data. So you've done an extremely valuable first step. So my plea to you guys is don't give up on your activities because it's been frustrating, but maybe change your tactics so that you are concentrating on the positivity of what you're doing rather than feeling like you're shoving a rock up the hill. So I mean that's just my perspective, and I would want to find a way to be able to support the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Can we get more feedback from people?
I just want to say one thing about this, a little bit different perspective on this. We all work for governments, basically, and you've all seen on the other end how hard it's to work with your local government. Do they believe in you? Do they give you information? I've heard that a lot. Well, take a look at it at Charter's perspective. I know if you jump down the throats at city officials, they will put a brick wall. I think I have seen the brick wall with Charter, but I've also seen an opening with Charter by being a bit different in the way I work with them. And I've always had a pretty good relationship with them. I was able to get a cable guide in Rapids, free, no problem, easy. Only a few of us did that. I've been talking with Charter that they someday may want me to be the point person for Wisconsin instead of somebody like Mike Hill. I've talked to them numerous times about it, is they don't want to be they just don't have time. But they talked about having one of us or myself be a point person for problems to get to there. I just haven't brought that up to you, but that's something that I just think that we need to not throw them under the bus as much, because I think it's going to cause us more harm. We don't have the way to really go against it. So I'm just looking at more of a different approach. I'm just kind of going out of on a tangent here, but the other thing is, I don't think you guys know this, but we are in HD basically in Charter. We are a station in HD.
Tell them how that happened real quickly.
And I'm going to have David tell you that. So most people say, "What? How are you in HD?" And I actually talked to tell Mike Hill, and I told him I wanted to be honest with him, and it was fine. So here.
So I think this is 3 months ago. Yeah, about 3 months ago, I realized that we had Drake encoders while we were inputting just regular composite in there. It does have an SDI input on there, so you can input SD, SDI, or HD SDI. And they said, well, you'd have to pay for it and configure it to switch it over from composite, your red and yellow and blue and purple, and to switch it over to an SDI single input, because we were having problems, because I wanted to start using closed captioning, because it wouldn't work. And so I got creative, downloaded the owner's manual to the Drake encoder. I'm like, oh, okay. So I took my handy dandy laptop, and there's a console port on front of that Drake encoder. So I set my laptop up to the IP in the manual that it told me to, and then I went one IP up from on the web browser and got into the web browser manager function in there. So I forgot to change the hypercaster over to a standard def output and left it in HD. And so I did the changeover from composite to SD, forgetting that I didn't change the source. It was still full HD single out. And so I did that, changed it. They have it, Charter's got the Drake encoder set at like 2.2 meg bitrate stream out. And so I seen it went all the way up to 25. I'm like, oh boy. So with some tinkering and stuff like that, I got everything all written down, numbers and stuff like that. But anyways, I went to the control room and I'm like, wow, this is really sharp. Small text is sharp now. And the TV actually said 1080 on there instead of 480. And I'm like, well, what the heck? I'm like, so I'm starting like, almost wet my pants for a second. I'm like, I started giggling, I'm like, do we know something that they don't know? But I asked Tom, I says, we paid for those boxes. Those are ours, correct? And he said, yes. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to touch them. And I did. And so I'm like running back and forth between the server room and then into our little control room for console cameras. And I got it bumped it all the way up to 18 megabits per second. Now it's only MPEG-2. There is an option for MPEG-4, but they must not have it set up for MPEG-4 receiving on their end, which would make the picture quality even much more sharper. Because we know what MPEG-2, what the quality is. It's there, but it's just not enough information, even at 18 megs, because it goes from that Ethernet into their Cisco switch that goes to fiber and then back to their head end. And we got 3 channels. So I'm like, okay, so then I did that with the government channel. And we all know that we run small text and stuff like that down below too, and that cleaned that up. So that's basically about it. I went in there, I tried to fool with it, and discovered that without their intervention, or it's going to cost you $500 a month to have HD, and it takes, I think Tom said it took them all day to figure out just how to configure the boxes to begin with when they installed it, because they don't know nothing about it. And here it took myself like 15 minutes to discover this. So.
We do have charters. They are aware of it. We wanted to be upfront. So even though there are boxes, I wanted to be upfront, and they were fine with it. I think if more of us do it, that might do something. But just like I wanted to be upfront with them so they knew.
Well, maybe we should write an article about how wonderful it is that Charter is it's so
But,
easy.
So
actually, we've got 5 minutes before the next workshop
Yes.
starts.
But-
So can I just kind of get a show of hands? Do we still want to be pursuing the HD issue in this room? Just whoever's here. Is this something important to you? Do we want to keep working at it somehow, some way, figure out some tactics, and keep pushing on it? Who does not want to do this anymore?
I started in 87, belly of the beast, before I came to Meta, and what's that, 25 plus years? It was like that day one. It hasn't changed. So, unfortunately, I'm just,
He's worn out. So,
But
yes, Mike, you want to quick?
I've got one
Yeah. Do you want to give him the microphone?
So, can I, if your cable penetration is 40%, does that matter to you?
I think it matters a lot.
Or not. I think that's one question. The
Yeah.
second question I would have would be for everybody in the room. Do you have audience strategies for other platforms and other delivery vehicles?
Could you explain?
An app, Roku channel, Apple TV, Prime channel, like other, other live streaming. Does everybody in the room have that, and are you promoting that use so that you're building audience?
Yes.
So, I mean,
by and large, from what we can ascertain, I would say the vast majority are doing something other than cable as well.
right. So, it's the reason why you're no longer called the Wisconsin Association of PEG channels,
Right.
as well, right?
Right.
So, I think this is about the 40% of your community that you're not serving well, and trying to find a way to serve them better.
Right. If that penetration report came back and it was 18% for everybody, I would say, we're done. Who cares? But we're at 40. And there is no platform that we use that probably is getting 40% of our residents visiting. It's still the largest platform we have. The downside, of course, is that it's not video on demand, it's appointment viewing, but nevertheless, it's 40%. Yes?
Does that make sense? I'm not trying to, sorry.
Right.
Sorry,
It's how many people subscribe to cable.
Correct. So it's just saying,
Right.
are they even watching that? Which I'm not saying that because I think obviously it's a great value for what community media does.
Yeah.
It's almost easier to say, hey, here's this live stream, click on that button, versus, hey, go to our HD channel. Well, now I got to go home to my cable box to watch. I don't have cable.
Right.
I haven't had cable for years, so.
Yes, but again, okay, we've got to wrap it
Yeah.
up. So
Sorry.
thank you all very much. I think somehow, please come to me and talk to me about this if you've got thoughts, and enjoy the next workshop.